What's going on, YouTube? Welcome. What's going on? Welcome to my review of Blade 2. Oh my god, I can't wait to talk about Blade 3. This is going to be so much fun. What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to my review of the Blade sequels. With the success of the original, obviously Hollywood was going to greenlight a couple of sequels, and we got two of them in 2002 with Blade 2 and then Blade Trinity in 2004. I think it's safe to say that most fans would agree that Blade 2 was a pretty solid, if not even superior, follow-up to the original, while Blade Trinity was disappointing to say the least. And we'll get into that in a bit. I had originally, when I set out to do the Blade trilogy, I wanted to do one video for each movie. But after releasing Blade yesterday, I decided, you know what, talking about Blade Trinity would just be taxing. And it wouldn't be fun for you to watch because I'd just be sitting here bitching for most of the time. And I don't want to do that. So I figured I'd do the sequels together, try to find positives in both, and certainly find some negatives in both as well. And even the second one, for as high as I hold it, you know, I think it's the best of the three. Spoiler alert, but I still find flaws in it. But let's start with some of the pros. And one of the pros that I love is in the second one, I love the Reapers. I think the Reapers and Nomak are 100% an upgrade over, Deacon Frost and just the regular vampires. And I was a fan of Deacon Frost. I thought Steven Dorff did a fantastic job in the role. He just didn't have a lot to work with. Again, I told you his plan was kind of shitty, and he just kind of sits around until he becomes the Blood God. But he does the role good enough given what he has to do. But Nomak is a mystery. We don't understand what his motivations are at first. We understand slowly what he is, what he can do, what he's capable of, but we don't understand why he hates vampires so much and what he wants. And slowly we get to start to figure out where he is in the plot, how important he is, and why Blade, has been sought after by the vampires to take all these Reapers out. And the Reapers are ferocious. Whereas, when he's doing battle with the vampires in the original, it's mainly fisticuffs, guns, swords. He has a couple of really cool weapons. But, I mean, for the most part, he's fighting another human being that has fangs and moves pretty quick. But these Reapers, they are like animals. They move like beasts. They don't move like people. And they attack in hordes, almost like zombies. So they overwhelm you with their numbers, and they're definitely way more mindless than a regular vampire. So they're creepy, okay? They work. And they're also getting bit by a vampire is already pretty invasive. It's a pretty creepy experience. But these things, when their mouth opens up and they kind of paralyze you and latch on, I mean, it kind of gives me like face hugger, like heebie-jeebies, where it's just I don't like it, but in a good way. You know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to like that. So it's effective. It's really well done. One of the other easy pros for part two is the cast, and I'll include Guillermo del Toro, the director, in there because he was a fantastic addition. That man just has a knack for bringing fantastical creatures to the big screen in these amazing ways that we've never seen. So bringing him on to do a feature where the main villain is something as creepy and detestable as the Reapers, I mean, it was a match made in heaven. He does a beautiful job. And then as far as the actors go, we have Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson returning as Blade and Whistler, respectively. We have Ron Perlman stepping in as Reinhardt, one of the leaders of the Blood Pack. We have Lenora Valera as Nisa. Norman Reedus coming in as Scud, the new kind of tech guy while Whistler was gone. Now, this was before his Walking Dead days, so he definitely wasn't the heartthrob that he is now, but it's cool to go back and see him in an earlier role. He does great. Luke Goss as Nomak, again, the head Reaper. Fantastic in this role. He and Ron Perlman will team up with Del Toro again in the sequel to Hellboy, which Ron Perlman is also in. But Luke Goss plays the bad guy in the Golden Army, so it's cool to see these guys working together prior to that, and I think they have a great kind of chemistry going on. So the cast, the principal cast especially, brings it. Blade and Reinhardt have a wonderful back and forth through most of the movie. A couple running jokes, couple taunts. It's just interesting. It's interesting to throw Blade into a situation where he has to work with his mortal enemy. It's a situation of, is the enemy my friend, and who do you trust and how far do you trust somebody? And that's an underlying theme through most of this movie. There are several moments where people's loyalty is called into question or tested, and a lot of times they fail and only to get their comeuppance. So it's a really fun movie in that regard to watch that kind of go about. And again, if you haven't seen it, I won't go into too many details about everything that happens with the twists and turns at the end of the movie, but it's definitely, that's a heavy theme. Is again, be careful who you trust, keep your enemies close. Again, as Blade is forced to work with the vampires to take on this new brutal Reaper threat. But very well done in this movie. But this movie is certainly not without its flaws. Again, I'm not a big fan of the resurrection of Whistler, even though I love the character. Chris Christopherson is brilliant in the first movie, but he had such a beautiful death. He and Blade had that last moment together. And you really tarnish it. You tarnish it by immediately. I'm talking immediately. It's like the first thing we do in this movie is Blade is going after Whistler, who they didn't kill. He turned into a vampire and he's been on the run for 2 years. So you just completely negate that heartfelt send off to the character. And you also call into question, like, the logistics of how long can one be a vampire before they can be transferred back. And, if they're transferred back, can they be rebit and returned? And again, that's clouded even more in the next movie, but we'll get into that in a minute. But I just don't like bringing him back. I don't think it's handled very well. Regardless of how I feel about having him back in this movie, the movie's definitely better for having him there, but you have to handle it better. You have to handle it better in the first movie. Then don't kill him off. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't kill off a character, have that amazing moment, and then just as Marvel's finding out, bring him right back. It ruins it. It ruins it. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of it at all. Also, again, let's keep on the negatives for part two. I'm not a fan of a lot of the CGI in the fights. One of the strengths of the first movie, and again, I said this yesterday, is all of the action that's done on camera. Wesley Snipes out there punching people in the face, and it feels real. And here, a lot of times, especially in both of these sequels, we have either CGI or very half-hearted play fighting. Wesley Snipes is still a fantastic martial artist, and for the most part, his sequences hold up. But it's a lot of the other cast that I don't believe them as much, and it happens a lot more in Blade Trinity. But even here, you're starting to see cracks. All of the action sequences for the most part in the first one work. Here, some of them I could just completely disregard because it feels like I'm playing a video game, not unlike The Matrix 2. You know what I'm talking about. So, again, not a big fan of some of the CGI, the choice to really use it. And also, again, another little nitpick, but there's a sequence, and they even make a joke about it, with Blade walking into a nightclub, paying homage to how the first movie starts. Why the hell aren't the vampires freaking the hell out? I mean, I guess he has the blood pack with him, so maybe they're just like, oh, okay, everything's kosher. But still, they could have went a step further and addressed the awkwardness of having him there at least a little bit. It would have been a fun little moment. But anyway, that's really my only negatives for the second movie. I think that it's a perfect sequel. I like it more than the first one. Aside from the action, I think that the fight scenes, especially hand to hand, are done perfectly in the first movie, but everything else in this sequel is done better. I think Blade, Wesley Snipes, is starting to find a balance between being stoic and being serious and having a lot of fun with the character. So there were some moments where he lets loose a little bit more than he would have in the first movie, and I genuinely enjoy it. So I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I think it's just a little bit better than the first one. I believe I gave the first one a 7. I'll give this one an 8. I think it just barely beats it out. But we've got 2 solid entries in the Blade franchise. So let's take a look at part 3, Blade Trinity. All right, listen, I said at the beginning of this video I did not want to turn this into a Blade Trinity bashing video. There's certainly enough of those out there. It is well documented that this movie was a miss. It completely killed this franchise. and any hope of any of these spin-offs or sequels they were trying to set up in this movie from ever getting greenlit. I mean, we're still waiting for another movie, and with the writer strike, who knows what's going to happen with that. But here we are, and we have Blade Trinity, and the anticipation for this movie as a child, my age, I was, in my teens, had grown up with the first two, and then this movie drops, and I was familiar with Ryan Reynolds. He was not a megastar yet, but I knew him from Van Wilder and some of the other movies he had been in. But I knew he was funny. I was excited to see him. Also had a huge crush on Jessica Biel, so she was just in the TCM remake briefly before this, and I'm a huge fan of that. I just reviewed that in my TCM videos. Their addition to the franchise works for me. I like their characters. I think that Jessica Biel does a good enough job as Whisker's daughter on, kind of a quest for revenge. Kind of odd and all that they don't really address Whisker's death, but I'll talk about that in a moment. The Ryan Reynolds character, Hannibal King, is just Deadpool light. This is the framework for that character. So if you like Deadpool, you're probably going to like Hannibal King. He does wear a little thin for me in some moments, but for the most part, his one-liners hit. I think he's funny. He brings a little bit of levity to some situations that sorely need it because they're just boring, rough. Choose your word. I don't care. But again, the movie isn't all bad, okay? I also think that when we do get to see Blade, he's still Blade. He's still really badass. Wesley Snipes still knows how to carry himself and have that persona. It's just that we're completely neutered from Blade. It's well documented again. Wesley Snipes and David S. Goyer's relationship by this point, he's thrust into the director's role because Del Toro was making Hellboy, so he does not come back for part three. So David S. Goyer, who had written all three movies, is thrust into the director's chair, and I guess he just wasn't ready. I don't know, or if he wanted to do things his way and set up his new world, his new universe, and that rubbed Wesley the wrong way. I don't know. I wasn't there. But what I do know is the movie that's in front of you doesn't feature a lot of Blade, and that makes me sad. That makes me upset because I was here for a Blade. And I mentioned Whistler dying a minute ago, so let's get into that real quick. I already hated that you brought him back. You already ruined his death in the first movie. You brought him back in the second one. Fine, okay, I've moved on. But he's in the third movie for a brief moment. He's completely phoning it in, probably because he knows what's about to happen. Um, but just to kill him that way, to just kill him at the beginning of the movie in such a stupid, moronic way, and then to have the characters for the most part. I mean, no Blade like screams for a moment. But then after that, everybody just moves on. I mean, he's conversing with Whistler's daughter, Jessica Biel's character, several times after this, and now that would have been a great moment to have some sort of conversation where Blade could have really shown how much that man meant to him, because that was always a running theme. Was, the tough guy macho can't tell how much, he loves his father figure. So that would have been a great moment for him to let his guard down to the one person that may understand what he's going through in Whistler's estranged daughter. So we're robbed of that moment. We're robbed of any kind of emotion because the movie just rushes through it to get on to the next half-hearted, uh, unenthusiastic scene. You can tell that Wesley Snipes does not want to be here. I mean, in one scene, you can't even get him to open his eyes, so they had to CGI his eyes open. It's a travesty. And what's even worse is they found a way to introduce Dracula into a Blade movie and fuck it up and make it boring. It's not the actor's fault. I can't think of his name, but he's fine. I watched Prison Break. I liked him and Captain Cold. I thought they were really cool. So it's not that he can't be decent, but my God, you only show him like three times, and I mean, what's he do? What does he do other than to throw out some cheesy dialogue, and then all of a sudden Blade has his respect and he does this ultimate gesture at the end for him? They tried to do too much. They tried to do too much in this movie. Too many villains, too many plot threads, too many sequel setups, too many spin-offs, too much everything except for what I'm showing for. You remember how in the first movie I complimented the fights? This one, they're just heavily edited. In the second one, they went crazy with the CGI, and this one you just can't see what the hell's going on. So we've completed the metamorphosis from really fun, awesome hand-to-hand fights to video games to now it's just we're not even going to show you what the hell's going on. We're going to cut, jump back and forth. I think there's one scene where like they're having a sword fight and it goes back and forth between Blade and Dracula and they're both just going like it's like, woo, we play a rock'em sock'em robots, boys. What are we doing? I don't even know what's going on right now. Show me something. So I mean, oh, how the mighty have fallen. It used to be the strength of the franchise, and in this movie, it's absolutely a weakness. The combat, the fights, for the most part. Again, you have Triple H, a trained fake fighter, and he's whiffing and throwing batting practice with Ryan Reynolds, and they're dubbing in, Impact. Like, it's bad, guys. It's really bad. I'm sorry. I didn't want to shit on this movie the entire time. I still kind of ended up shitting on it for most of the video, but they had a chance to have the greatest superhero franchise of all time. Certainly the best trilogy. If this would have been great, would have been better than anything. Better than Captain America, better than Iron Man. It would have been the best. But this movie was such an epic failure that it killed everything. It derailed everything. I mean, it's Batman and Robin bad. It killed the franchise, and it just didn't have the backing of Batman to get a reboot a couple years later. So we're still waiting. I'm excited for the new movie. I think that the new iteration is going to be a lot of fun. I'm worried that it's going to be too jokey, too close to Blade Trinity with the MCU's type of humor and the fact that I don't know that they'll give us a hard R. God, I hope they do. God, I hope they do. I hope they stick to their word and we get Deadpool R-rated and we get Blade R-rated because that's what we need. We need Deadpool, we need Blade, we need Punisher. We need some adult superheroes. Please give it to us. Guys, thank you all so much for watching. This concludes my Blade franchise review. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I got something special planned for tomorrow. So until then, have a good day. Be good people. Thank you very much. Yeah.